Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, Constantine, right? I think. How did Rome become Christian? I'm not sure. Let's find out. Knowledgia, great channel. Ooh, 2 million. Congrats. Original link to the video, top of the description. My name's Connor if you're new. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's go.
Emerging from the chaos of the previous 50 years and the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome was in desperate need of a stable recovery period. Having been pressed almost to the point of collapse across many fronts, time was required to rebuild her economic and military strength, as well as civilian confidence in the empire's ability to defend its borders. The years 285 to 335 AD would deliver this period of more stable governance and prosperity. That's not to say a lack of military action on Rome's borders or succession battles within, but nothing to the same.
Guys, so the southern border is essentially on an ocean, just of sand, right? So I know the northern African coast, because it's near the Mediterranean, can support civilizations, right? But essentially, this area, you don't have to worry much down here, right? Just because it's the Sahara, right?
Rome's borders or succession battles within, but nothing to the same degree as the 50 years prior. Another transformational change was to occur for the empire during this period: the adoption of Christianity as state religion under Constantine. This would mark a new monotheistic phase of the empire's history, leaving behind the pagan pantheon of gods followed for nearly a millennium, which were entwined with the very fabric of Roman life.
For some reason, I thought of Constantine as an early Eastern Roman Byzantine emperor, but clearly he wasn't.
The era began with the reign of Diocletian. He became emperor in 284 AD, putting down his unpopular predecessor Carinus after a short rule. Diocletian was another military man, as many of his predecessors, and also far from a noble birth. He had known the toil and hard life of a soldier, working his way up the ranks through merit and the respect of his men. Almost immediately after becoming emperor, he made off to face numerous Germanic tribal threats, particularly the Alemanni and Carpi, as they continued to probe and push into Roman territory. After some success against these groups, he then made to face the Sarmatians in the Balkans, an equestrian people who had been pushing northwest from their home territory in Persia. This quick pivot between completely different styles of warfare success against these groups, he then made to face the Sarmatians in the Balkans, an equestrian people who had been pushing northwest from their home territory in Persia.
Wow.
This quick pivot between completely different styles of warfare shows Rome's accumulated experience in this period. Centuries of facing barbarian and Eastern threats had fed into military techniques and capabilities.
I'd be interested in how. So I'm assuming from Persia, from the east of the Black Sea, in between the Mediterranean. I'm assuming they pushed through there up to the Asian steppe area and then westward. But that'd be cool to learn about.
So Eastern threats had fed into military techniques and capabilities, so much so that the same legions could move from defeating an almost completely infantry-based Germanic tribal force to a cavalry-dominated Persian opposition, armed with lance and long slashing sword, able to move at great pace across the battlefield. Only 2 years into Diocletian's reign, and a very interesting development occurs.
Guys, one of the main things that I'm not sure of, because I'm no expert, but it seems to be the case, is that sooner or later, like, why do empires not last forever? Of course they can't last forever, but it seems like this. If you get powerful enough over time, you become complacent and you don't have to evolve in certain ways, right? And I feel like that's what leads to the death of empires from outside powers. They can't be complacent because they're not the main power. They might be in Southern Asia, Southern Central Asia, around the Persian Empire. But I feel like that might lead to why empires don't last forever, is because other areas can't afford to be complacent in how they work, and the ones who are in power tend to be complacent, and then sooner or later, I don't know.
Into Diocletian's reign, and a very interesting development occurs, revealing something of the man's character. He chose to appoint a co-emperor, Maximian, who would govern the Western Empire while Diocletian ruled the East. While co-rulers weren't unheard of, to do it this early in his reign in a non-familial arrangement unlike those before him, and also off the back of his own strong position, both within the army and society more broadly, was a revealing move. It showed a degree of strategic thinking and ability to foresee problems that so many of his predecessors seemed to lack, not just of the last 50 years, but dotted throughout the history of Rome. With Diocletian proceeding with campaigns in the east and Maximian sent to do battle on European frontiers, they were hit with another secession attempt. This time Rome's British and northern French possessions, not dissimilar to Postumus in the Gallic Empire over 30 years before. Whether this spurred Diocletian's next decision is unclear. However, in 293 AD, he pioneered a novel system of rule now known as the Tetrarchy. In this system, he would remain emperor with his co-emperor Maximian, but beneath them there would be another two rulers, or Caesars.
So the breakup of East and West wasn't as abrupt as I previously thought then, because there was an attempt within the full Roman Empire borders to separate responsibilities. It wasn't as if there was just this clean cutoff over a decade or two where it's like, okay, we can't handle it, we have to separate, which is really cool.
Constantius, there would be another two rulers, or Caesars, Constantius and Galerius. The idea being that this decision would enable each to deal with issues of
Tetra 4.
The idea being that this decision would enable each to deal with issues of governance and the threats of their region more effectively. As well as the degree of independence this rule of four gave, it also provided a clear succession line from the co-emperors, now styled as brothers, to the two young Caesars below them, presented as sons. Alongside
kind of reminds me of the three Frankish kingdoms that developed, right, from one giant Frankish kingdom to East Middle and to West Middle and East Francia.
Excel them, presented as sons. Alongside extensive administrative reforms carried out with a focused and bureaucratic approach, another notable aspect of Diocletian's rule was his persecution of Christians. The minority religion had suffered on and off under different emperors for over 250 years at this point.
Guys, I wonder what made Christianity able to survive where I'm sure many other religious messiahs, messianic religions, I know that were pretty popular, right? I don't think Jesus was unique in his proclaiming to be Son of God and this new thing, right? And I'm wondering what made people adhere and loyal. That's the word I was looking for. How did the loyalty of Christianity work where others failed? It's the main question I have.
The cruelty of rulers such as Nero towards them is well known. However, Diocletian also carried out heavy repression. From around 303 AD, churches and scriptures burned, with many priests arrested and...
Okay, so sooner or later, you're going to be like, okay, rather than putting down this new religion, I'm just going to proclaim it as me part of that religion, and then I can rule in that way. So it seems to be almost, or it seems to be, let me know if you disagree, please. I'm kind of talking out loud here. I always worry that I might be coming off as more confident than my knowledge should suggest. So let me know if this is wrong, or in your opinion. What was I going to say? What was I going to say? Christian. Freaking hell.
Some put to death in terrible ways. The measures were largely ineffective at stamping out the faith, though, only serving to prevent Christians having roles in state administration for a period.
This is the problem with me, like, seeing myself as maybe I'm being too confident, but then I lose my train of thought. And so, what the heck? I wish I could rewind myself right now to see where I was going there.
Well known. However, the cruelty of rulers such as Nero towards them is well known. However, Diocletian also carried out heavy repression. From around 303 AD, churches and scriptures burned, with many priests arrested and some put to death in terrible ways. The measures were largely ineffective at stamping out the faith, though, only serving to prevent Christians having roles in state administration for a period. In 305 AD, after a reign of over 20 years, Diocletian and his co-emperor Maximian resigned. In what was supposed to be...
Who was the emperor when Jesus was alive? Was that Augustus? Tiberius?
A tidy handover of power from the figure who prided himself on being a stabilizing force for Rome, previous Caesars Galerius and Constantius Chlorus would have become the new Augusti. However, the tetrarchy wasn't to survive long. Chlorus soon died, with his son Constantine proclaimed emperor by his father's troops. This would thrust Rome into another period of successionary strife, with many claimants to the title of emperor between 309 and 313 AD. However, most of these threats were eliminated, with a key turning point in the consolidation of Constantine's power being the Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 AD.
So it seems like the real downfall of the Roman Empire happened in the late second century AD. After Marcus Aurelius onto Commodus, and then it kind of fell downward. I need to kind of solidify my knowledge there.
Being the Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 AD. Here, on the banks of the river Tiber, Constantine faced Maxentius's forces. They clashed on an open field, and Maxentius's losses were comprehensive, with himself likely flung from his horse and drowning in the river. This didn't save him from a humiliating fate, though, with his corpse retrieved by Constantine's men, decapitated, and subsequently paraded around the streets of Rome. Aside from acting as a crucial consolidation of Constantine's power, the battle also marked a key turning point in the religious history of the Roman Empire, and that of...
I would assume that as Constantine became more powerful right here, it was the turn of where Christianity was a smaller nuisance to where, you know what, it's becoming more powerful and more powerful. Now that I'm getting more power, I should probably just ride this train rather than try and stop it, you know?
Of Europe as a whole from religious history of the Roman Empire, and that of Europe as a whole for a millennia to come. It is said by historian Eusebius that while marching to battle, Constantine saw a vision of the cross above the sun with the words, "In this sign, you shall conquer."
Oh, God. Okay. I wasn't there. But that's exactly what I would say if I just conquered someone and I see Christianity as an unstoppable force that I just need to ride. That's what I would say. That's exactly what I would say. As to be like, I saw a cross, guys. Oh my God, I'm with you now. You know? Am I being too skeptical?
How
Cynical?
much of this vision occurred, or whether a natural phenomena of some sort, matters little.
No, maybe, but that seems too coincidental. I'm sure it was made up to show him as being pro-Christian as he's gaining power in order to ride that wave of growing Christianity, take advantage of it, and solidify his power. That's just me, though.
It marked a crossroads in Constantine's religious journey, and that of the empire as a whole. Within a year of the battle, he issued the Edict of Milan in 313 AD.
Oh, I've heard of this. Okay.
Which ended persecution of Christians, allowing them freedom to practice their faith. He also proceeded to centralize a previously quite disparate and autonomous early church. This set the precedent for tight state control over religious affairs, which would eventually morph into the influential organization of the Catholic Church. This was compounded with the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Here, an accepted canon was agreed.
What I will say here, guys, if Christianity was still very small, and it was not very long after Jesus' death, do you think Constantine would still have seen that vision? I think not. But I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Upon in 325 AD. Here, an accepted canon was agreed upon, with certain other texts excluded. The Arian controversy and how best to suppress it was also a subject of discussion. This was an ominous forewarning of repression to follow in later centuries of groups such as the Cathars in France who fell outside of accepted orthodoxy. Despite his reign beginning in 306, he wouldn't make his final consolidation until 324 AD, and with it, also finally ending any remnant of the period of co-rules since Diocletian. Constantine 4 AD, and he wouldn't make his final consolidation until 324 AD, and with it, also finally ending any remnant of the period of co-rules since Diocletian. Constantine had been ruling uneasily alongside Licinius for some years, with the latter in possession of the eastern portion of the empire. However, by 323 AD, things had come to a head. Their fragile truce was called off, and Constantine sought the complete destruction of Licinius. Following a series of clashes, including a naval battle at the same Hellespont crossed by Alexander the Great some 600 years previously, Licinius was finally put down at the Battle of Chrysopolis. Here, the two men met with large forces, around 100,000 soldiers each. Constantine opted for a simple, huge frontal assault.
It's a lot of people.
It achieved the desired effect, routing Licinius's troops. The outcome of this large-scale clash between the two was heavy losses of up to 30,000 men for Licinius and his complete loss of power to Constantine, who would govern alone for the rest of his rule. Constantine's long reign would come to an end in 337 AD, with one of his last acts being to receive baptism. He had hoped to be baptized in the River Jordan as he crossed it to mount a new campaign in Persia, much like a crusade, but had been prevented by ill health. He had governed through the periods with challenge since 306 AD. This 31-year reign was an eternity compared to those of the 3rd century, which saw 20 emperors in 50 years.
Wow.
The same combined length of just Diocletian and Constantine's rule. With his passing, the Roman Empire was in a completely different position to 285 AD. It now had a new state religion, a huge metropolis and eastern power hub in Constantinople, as well as a modernized taxation and bureaucratic system thanks to the work of Constantine and Diocletian. While there would be some successionary tension, ultimately, rule would remain with his family until 350 AD. Emperor Constantine had set the direction of the empire for the remainder of its history, and also the coming direction of the European states to follow it. The centralized Catholic Church, of which he played no for the remainder of its history, and also the coming direction of the European states to follow it. The centralized Catholic Church, of which he played no small part in creating, would act as the dominant spiritual and social force throughout the region for more than a millennia. His reforms also provided a great challenge to the religion of Christianity itself, demanding it reduce its base of texts and morph with central authority, in a way quite opposed to Scripture.
What? No way. So he would. So wait a second. Whoa. Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. I'm sorry. The narrator said that in a way as if it's surprising. Yeah, I'm sure. Let me go out on a limb here. Okay. Constantine did not actually see some holy thing happening, and that just kind of confirms it. Oh, it didn't go with Scripture, as if he's just using it as a tool for power. Imagine that, you know. Am I being too certain here? Let me know if you disagree.
This was the beginning of a messy process by which religion was merged with state and the mechanisms of power.
Yeah, it just seems like a great video from Knowledgia, as always. The channel makes great videos. Also, it very much makes sense how an extension of this, what would later on and centuries later become the Papal States, turned out to be the Byzantine holdings in the Italian peninsula. Again, it just makes sense. I'm not trying to be too cynical, okay? But it just makes sense. I can't try and not be cynical because I feel like I'm being cynical. It seems like Christianity was a growing movement that at the time where Constantine was gaining power was a very what's the word? Convenient mode of solidifying power, and later on that just kind of confirms my belief there, or furthers my belief there, in that he was going against Scripture to make it more part of the government. That just makes sense for someone trying to capitalize on a movement to increase his own power, especially as he's being new to that power. So let me know if you disagree. Fascinating video. Love y'all. Would appreciate any comments down below. You guys are always awesome. Hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye.